this is what I heard from U.S. military intelligence. There was a weather warfare expert, an earthquake warfare expert by the name of Thad Allen, Thad Allen. He used to be with the U.S. military. He's now with the RAND Corporation. He was in Christchurch, New Zealand, with 8 congressmen, and they all left exactly 2 hours before the earthquake. So, that's a strong indication that this was not some kind of natural event. I've also heard from some Australian connections of mine that the same group of people, they're expecting something like 1 million refugees from the United States. That is to say, when the American Christian and Jewish and other people of genuine faith realized that they had living within their midst a million people who actually worshipped the god Lucifer or Satan, and that they were doing horrible things like kidnapping children, that these people would be told quite clearly they were no longer welcome in the United States, and they know they've got to find somewhere to escape to, and that's why they were asking if they could move to the South Island. They're also trying to get Tasmania, and they were told no. And because they feel like they're cornered rats, I believe this is why they attacked Japan. So what the American people need to do is immediately start some hearings to find out exactly who these people are and what they were planning. This is a faction. Most of them are of Khazarian ancestry, and that's the same ancestry as the Ashkenazi Jews, but they're not Jewish, okay? They're not of the Jewish faith. You have to start some hearings and find out who these people are, where they are, and what they were doing. And, most of us who reading our news on the Internet at this point are aware of things like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberger Group, and their names are publicly available. A lot of the people in these groups are good people, but a lot of them apparently were part of a group that wanted to, they've been in direct contact with us. They wanted to have a population of 500 million people. The way they put it is, we want a smaller, better-run planet. And they told me, I have tape recordings of these conversations and stuff. They told me they wanted to, eliminate the population, that war didn't do it very well, so they were going to try disease and starvation. And there's plenty of credible scientific evidence out there, and that they created HIV, they created SARS.
Right.
There's a World Bank report making it very clear that they paid huge subsidies to farmers to turn their crops into energy instead of food, and that was the cause of the starvation crisis a couple of years ago. So there's a clear trail of evidence. There's a group of people, and they're from this earth. They're not aliens, they're not reptiles, they're human beings, who were trying to kill billions of people. And they're in positions of very high power. They're concentrated at the very tip-top of the military, at the very tip-top of the Vatican, in the British royal family, in the Congress.
Okay, Benjamin, this is our Camelot audience is very well aware of this.
Getting back to the situation here in Japan.
I actually want to ask you about Korea, because right before this happened, there were war games going on. The U.S. had ships over there near Korea, and the North and South Korea were coming very close to what appeared to be maybe a war-like situation. And I'm wondering whether there is a link-up with this event.
There is a link-up in the sense that these people are trying, they've been trying to start World War III, very desperately for quite a few years now, and the reason why is if they can get a giant war going, then, they're in their element. Mayhem and warfare and chaos, and they can keep themselves in power.
But why? But let me ask you in terms of why did they target that particular area of Japan? Because isn't that a lesser populated area than most other parts of Japan?
Well, here's something you can also verify that does not make sense from a scientific. I mentioned it earlier, but my understanding is the attack was actually directed at Tokyo and was deflected somehow.
Okay.
And if you look at the map of where the tsunami hit, you see there's an island chain called the Ogasawara Islands, and they should have been in the line of the tsunami, but they were not. It stopped dead there. There was nothing in Tokyo. There was some shaking. It knocked a couple books off my shelf, but that was the extent of it. So, I believe they actually were aiming for Tokyo. I also got sent by Leo Zagami, who is a self-described Satanist, a photograph of a tsunami hitting a bunch of skyscrapers, a drawing, I should say. So I'm pretty sure it was aimed at Tokyo and somehow got deflected. There is
okay, that's very possible. I would say there seemed to be a lot of potential for the tsunami to go out from Japan, from the center point, and yet that also seemed to be deflected. So there could be, added evidence there.
Yeah, no, it's a clear sign that there's what we're experiencing is not normal natural phenomena. And this is something that scientists should really investigate. They should go out there and try to find out why didn't the tsunami hit, other places. That is a very important issue because, and the other thing that really people need to look at is how important is psychological warfare in such a situation. Because it's possible that if you get a high enough threshold of panic, that some events may be self-fulfilling. A good example was this French mathematician who did some calculations. He figured out the day of his own death, and when that day came around, he was so scared he committed suicide. So I'm just wondering if there's some kind of way that mass psychology, it's just all this stuff needs to be investigated. It's a whole new era for people to study. But
well, I think that's a very good point. I think that Dr. Waterman is in a position to evaluate to some degree that aspect because of his background and training in the intelligence world. He is not in that world at the moment, but he was trained in that aspect of things.
Well, what do you know about earthquake and tsunami weapons, Dr. Waterman?
Okay, I was in the chat room. I got kind of caught off guard there, Carrie. What was it you wanted me to comment on?
Well, psychological warfare, how useful and how potent that is as part of this sort of attack. If you take the idea that if this was even a natural occurrence on any level and then augmented and pushed higher, so to speak, to become the sort of debacle that it has, then the psychological warfare that the media is a part of, and so on. Do you want to?
Well, I think it helps them support their agenda. There's no doubt about that. Psychological warfare is always at play too prior to events. So it'd be interesting in retrospect to soon be looking, at what was going on prior. Was sales and stock of potassium iodide going up? Was there other agendas geopolitically happening? And I think we're going to start seeing a picture again. One of the things we have to remember is that they might be making it sound more disastrous, and I'm not there. I don't know for sure. Although we're trying to figure it out, by bits and pieces. And if they want to make it more disastrous than it is, it would be logical to assume they would do that from the standpoint of the fact that the Federal Reserve, the debt of China, or debt in China and Japan, China is the biggest now, the Federal Reserve would like them to, so to speak, have the American people pay the bill, and so we do that by giving them supplies and so forth, and that takes the central banks off the hook.
Yeah, I'm directly involved in all that stuff, so let me tell you what's been going on behind the scenes. The Federal Reserve Board has been, going on repeated begging missions to China for quite a few years. What happened with the Lehman shock was that in 2008, the Federal Reserve faction in the U.S. Got cut off. They said, your credit is no longer good. And That's why if you look at, for example, Japanese export statistics from that time, you'll see like a 76% year-on-year drop in car exports to the U.S. In other words, they could no longer write checks and buy stuff. They had to pay cash. What happened after that was they sent a high-level delegation to China and said, look, it's all going to be different with Obama. It's all going to change. We're going to mend our ways. We're going to stop the Iraq War. And so the Chinese, they gave them a year's worth of extra credit. And then since that time, it's been a kind of a back and forth, and they've been doing stuff like they took all this giant machinery made out of silverware that they designed for the Manhattan Project, melted it down, sold the silver. They went and took Canada's gold stocks and sold that. It's like a junkie going to the pawn shop and selling everything he's got to keep his habit going. And what's happened is that they've come pretty well close to the end of their tether now. They're not getting any more finance, and they've run out of stuff to sell. And that's why they started resorting to threats and violence, saying, well, if you don't give us money, we'll destroy the planet. And that's why it's very, very important for the American people to identify these specific individuals who are making these threats and remove them from the command structure of your military establishment. And they know who they are. We know who they are. And so do they. And there's enough people, good guys in the military now, they know that they have to go and find George Bush Sr. and get him out of communication with his subordinates. You have to get Henry Kissinger, do the same, put him in isolation. You have to look at...
easier said than done. I want to say here, though that there's a person writing in our chat room, Benjamin, saying that potassium iodide supplier in Canada provided the South Korean government with huge amounts of KI prior to this Japan event by KI.
Oh, well, that's exactly the sort of thing that proves that this was a premeditated attack on Japan.
Right.
And if that's true, there's some of your financial forensics that might tell you a story if that's true.
But it also links in the Korea angle because, again, I just intuitively, I sense that there's something going on here between China, Korea, and Japan and the U.S. that somebody was not happy about something and therefore resorted to this craziness, and everyone's paying for it, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I'm just throwing that out there for people to start making those links up, connecting the dots.
Well, like I say, it's a power struggle, right? And there's a large group of Koreans in North and South Korea are saying, hey, we shouldn't be pointing a million guns at each other. We're from the same family. And so let's make peace. And then there's the people who've been, receiving large amounts of money by being part of this whole military charade who say, oh, well, I'm going to lose my rice bowl. Well, I can't do that. And so the same in Japan. There's a large group of people who've been paid large amounts of money to keep this whole system going. And they require fear and enemies and stuff in order to justify their large budgets and their large salaries and all their toys. So it is a financial thing, and a lot of people's livelihoods are at stake. And
we're going to be right back.
Online, all the time, your gateway to the world. AFR American.